A call for peacefulness, as developed by the working group on war and peace in the German Buddhist Union. 1 year ago, in the summer of 2023, some German Buddhists founded the War and Peace Working Group in the DBU, German Buddhist Union, which has been meeting for online conferences since then. The working group, like the entire DBU, German Buddhist Union, is of course politically non-partisan. After we became aware that in the more than 2,500-year history of the cultures inspired by the teachings of the Buddha and his successors, there has been repeated involvement in acts of war, the core of the War and Peace Working Group in the DBU is fully committed to the original and unconditionally peaceful insights and teachings of the Buddha and other great teachers of Buddhism. Contemporary representatives of Buddhism, such as the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet, Thich Nhat Hanh from Vietnam, Maha Ghosananda from Cambodia, and many others, have developed and expressed an attitude of complete non-violence precisely because of their experience of violence. The key to consistent peacefulness is a fundamental attitude of impartiality in cases of conflict, non-identification with a nation or ethnic group, and the attempt to see the suffering of violent people as well. They too suffer from their views, anger and rage, and the consequences of their own use of violence. Therefore, it is possible to conduct skillful and understanding communication, even with an aggressor, or to strive for this again and again. On the basis of our Buddhist practice of mental training in insight, wisdom, and compassion, we as participants in the War and Peace Working Group of the German Buddhist Union call on the readers or the listeners of this document to consider the following perspectives. Responding to war with war always leads to more war, and war is the greatest suffering that a civilization can experience. Any warfare should therefore be avoided or ended as quickly as possible. All peace initiatives are to be welcomed and continued with urgency. Even those who use violence, who start and wage wars, tell narratives that must be understood in order to be able to change them and bring about a peaceful solution. If you do not want war, or want war to end a war, or want to end a war, then you must listen to aggressive rulers yourself and be able to find out the points from which they can change their attitude, their harshness and aggressiveness. If you want to keep peace and end war, a civilized society should be able to exploit all the possibilities of dialogue and diplomacy and not rely on military and technical force. Those who believe they are in the right, who feel threatened or are even attacked, should not develop an aggressiveness that matches that of the aggressor. This would only escalate the conflicts, and the peaceful character of a country or society would be lost. It may seem difficult, very difficult and complicated, to confront dictatorships and authoritarian systems other than with counter-violence, of which there are certainly successful examples, but waging war against them only leads to further unspeakable cruelty and destruction. Particularly in the age of highly technological societies, in which advanced computer technologies such as artificial intelligence and above all nuclear weapons represent an incalculable and real risk. Every country and every nation Every union of states must learn to completely refrain from using such destructive technologies and not to use them under any circumstances, thus not provoking their use by the supposed enemy. In all cultures and societies on this planet, there are far more people who want peace and prosperity than there are people who are prepared to use violence and are willing to wage war. At best, many people can be persuaded by those in power and manipulators to decide to use violence. Many religions and spiritual traditions, such as original Buddhism, offer means and ways of cultivating and practicing peacefulness, understanding communication, and appreciative coexistence without violence. Living in peace is a natural quality of existence for all living beings endowed with love and reason. More and more people must consciously demonstrate what this means and how we can live and cooperate with one another in peace, with mutual understanding and respect and genuine solidarity. We point out the human right to conscientious objection. No man or woman, and certainly no minors, should be recruited, called up, trained, and deployed to serve with weapons and to exercise military force against their will. We are very concerned about the intended remilitarization of German society and call for this development to be resisted with peaceful forms of expression and instead for a culture of peace to be cultivated in which people are encouraged in their personal development, social skills, creativity, individual freedom, and beauty. People who have developed the insight to refuse the use of violence and participation in war must be honored and protected in any case. This applies to all people who have cultivated and want to express a peace-loving attitude to life. Based on our Buddhist practice of mental training in insight, wisdom, and compassion, we, as participants in the War and Peace Working Group, call on the readers of this document, or listeners of this video, to reflect these views, their attitudes, and their actions accordingly. Peace initiatives in German and international society and politics that are supported by universal compassion and insightful in this respect should be supported spiritually and concretely, of course, across denominations, and all support for and participation in war should be avoided and ended. As the saying goes, there is no path to peace. Peace is the way. This means that all efforts to achieve peace must themselves be based on peacefulness. This is the call for peace by our working group and the German Buddhist Union. It has been developed over a year in our discussions. In fact, it took some time until this call or proclamation could be written down. We had quite intelligent but also controversial discussions. Of course, there are also Buddhist friends who are not sure whether violence can be avoided under any circumstances against an aggressor. But on the other hand, we felt, or most of our participants in this working group felt that okay, this is discussed widely among politicians and voters of parties and in a general society. But we as Buddhists have to contribute our deep-rooted conviction that peace can only be achieved and maintained with peaceful methods. That's why after some discussions, controversial discussions, a core of this working group has come together and decided on this kind of call for peace. We are still discussing whether all the formulations here used in this call are appropriate, or whether some should be altered or adjusted to new insights that may occur with time. But for the moment, and this is now at the beginning of September 2024, we think this kind of call for peace is appropriate and even urgent. And we know it is quite controversial in the respect that mainstream politics are not going into this direction. We are not naive about peace. We know what's going on and how difficult the situation is. Also, this call for peace is not only coined for the Russian-Ukrainian war, it is also considered with respect to what's going on in Israel and the Gaza Strip, and in Africa and other places where wars are going on. It's a terrible situation, and we fear, or many people fear, that there's a degeneration in the human attitude towards warfare, that the application of violence and very cruel weapons becomes a normality, sponsored and financed by the industry. There's no news at the moment you can listen to, most of the news, without stories and reports about the recent wars going on. It feels like the war is very present in our daily life, which even if we live in a country which is not confronted with shellings and direct applications of these effects of war, but indirectly we are, quite obviously. And yeah, so we feel it is time to remind ourselves, and particularly our Buddhist friends and friends of other spiritual and religious backgrounds, Christian and others, Muslim and Hindu and many others, of our values of peacefulness, refraining from the application of violence and the use of weapons, and an atmosphere of peacefulness is much more than not fighting a war. It's a whole mentality where we feel violence is not appropriate. We should not use violence. If it's about defense, it's difficult to say something very simple and clear, but we think there's still a difference. If we have a peaceful attitude, and let's say we were attacked, and attacks are going on in the moment, we can try to resist with an inner attitude of basic peacefulness, or freak out and think now is the time that we also should apply violence. Now is the time where killing is appropriate. We think that's not right. As we should have a evolutionary development in our attitudes towards this. So many wars have been fought in the past. Of course, in the 20th century, we all know what has been going on in the 20th century. And we could have learned that this kind of warfare is such a disaster that we do not want to see a society moving again back into this kind of barbarian behavior. So that is the background, that we think peacefulness is a good word. It's an inner mentality where we are Sure, and maybe we need meditation or other mental training to maintain peacefulness, that this is the best and the only appropriate attitude towards any conflict. And the ongoing or repeated question whether under certain circumstances, it's not appropriate to act with violence or to react with violence is a distraction from this topic, is a distraction from what it really needs. Of course, like if you are attacked, even like in private or somewhere on the street or whatever, to wherever, to reject it. This is not the issue. Even an emotional reflex where you can't help it but strike back, that is not the question. You can become angry for a moment and then return to your inner peacefulness when you recollect your intentions to be peaceful. This is not the problem. But if there is not such a strong intention to maintain peacefulness, it would be so easy, and that's what we're seeing going on in the world, to completely abandon it and say, now is the time for our weapons to be applied. Now is the time for the industries to produce more and more weapons. Now is the time for the soldiers to march and to shoot. Now killing is allowed and even necessary. That's what's going on. And then the attitude of peacefulness is totally abandoned and forgotten. And it is so difficult then to find it again, to re-establish the peace. We know it's possible, and Europe is in a way, a wonderful example for this. Germans have been the bad guys, particularly, and decades later, there's peace again, there was friendship again between all the countries. So let's hope this will be again possible.